Madrid 2, Borussia Dortmund 0. Madrid are the champions of Europe once again, but it didn't always look that easy. Dortmund very much gave as good as they got, and this was a really close football match. We're going to get straight into looking at why. One of the reasons why this was a close game was because we saw two sides who, yes, were willing to press reasonably high up the pitch, but neither side really fully committed to a full-blooded press. Now, of course, what happens in a game like this, with a lot of technical players on the pitch, when you don't press, both teams are able to play out from the back. So there were spells in the game where Madrid would play out from the back, get the ball, play through the midfield, and dominate and control for spells. But we also saw the same from Borussia Dortmund as well. Now, as we know, Madrid actually ended up having more of the ball, so that is where our focus is going to be initially. What Madrid looked to do in possession, because like I said, yes, these Dortmund forwards kind of pressed a little bit, but it wasn't that intense. Quickly, what they would actually do is retreat more into a sort of 4-1-4-1 sort of shape like this, or you could call it a 4-5-1 as well. The question is, how are Madrid going to attack this? What is Madrid's plan to try and break it down, move the ball forward, and actually cause some real danger to the Dortmund defence? Well, it started off with a pattern that we've seen quite a lot now for many years, and it was almost fitting that he'd done it in his final game as well. Toni Kroos dropping into almost a left-sided centre-back position at times, alongside Nacho in the middle and Rudiger on the right-hand side, with Carvajal on the right and Mendy on the left, both moving further forward. Camavinga is going to take up a midfield position. Now, Toni Kroos playing in this position, dropping into a back three, almost outside of the Dortmund shape, allowed him to get on the ball and dominate. And we can see that, one, in his heat map, that position, that deeper left area, but also actually in his stats, just how much of the ball he had in this game. To be honest, it was absolutely ridiculous. But this wasn't the most important thing for Kroos. Not the volume of touches he had, but actually his positioning. That was the more important thing. Because the positioning of Toni Kroos was the trigger for Dortmund to try and apply a bit more pressure on the ball, particularly with Sabitzer. Now, we know that Sabitzer is a midfielder who likes to engage, likes to press quite high. So any time that Toni Kroos was to get the ball on the left, Sabitzer saw this as the cue to move forward towards him. That's completely fine, but this is the first little tactical thing going on in the game. Kroos moving out to his left-hand side position, Sabitzer going out towards him to engage. Now, the next thing we have also is Jude Bellingham and Emre Can in midfield. Bellingham, we all know how good he is, the threat that he possesses. Dortmund seems very aware of it as well. I mean, they probably know better than most, to be fair. But as Jude Bellingham would then roam into these positions, Emre Can was not intending on giving him any space, any time to receive on the ball. And as a result, Bellingham actually had a really quiet game. Chan done a really good job of kind of marshalling him in these areas, stopping him from getting on the ball, turning and then driving with power, and also, stopping him with fouls sometimes as well. But Chan done a really good job here. It was actually a very effective way of stopping Jude Bellingham, so Dortmund deserve credit. However, it is going to open up a potential problem, because what we can see is that Sabitzer has now been drawn out of position, as has Emre Can. And this leaves Julian Brandt, the only other midfielder, with all the defensive work to do. And Brandt isn't naturally a defensive player. He's not a ball-winning midfielder by any means. He wants to go the other way with the ball at his feet. This meant that Madrid did have an option here, and really an area which they could have exploited, and it almost frustrated me that they didn't exploit it more due to actually some silly positioning. So what we can see is that Valverde and Camavinga could have quite comfortably been 2 versus 1 versus Brandt, because Fulkrug is going to be in a position here near Nacho. The 2 versus 1 is there, with Adeyemi distracted by the runs of Carvajal and also Rodrigo on the right-hand side. So we do have the potential for the 2v1 here. Kroos is good enough on the ball to get it in there. We saw it a few times. Rudiger can also get the ball in there as well. Madrid could have been 2 versus 1, but the positioning was wrong, particularly when the ball was on the left-hand side. They were almost cutting the passing lanes to their own teammates. You see, what Camavinga was doing was moving forward up into these areas, almost into Valverde's space, which actually made the job of Brandt a bit easier. He could almost mark the two of them at once. You see, we now can't get the ball to Valverde. If we're Kroos in this position, I can't get the ball to Valverde because Camavinga and Brandt are both in the way. What Madrid should have actually done is dropped Camavinga a little bit deeper. This would have drawn Brandt out a little bit more, or certainly left him with a bit of a guessing game. You're either giving Camavinga time on the ball, or you're giving Valverde space to receive. This is what Madrid should have done. Had they done this, they would have found it a lot easier to progress the ball in this game, because Valverde in the right half space then would have had a lot of joy and a lot of space to attack. But we didn't actually see that, again, probably largely because of just poor positioning from Madrid. Tactically, this is actually a little bit poor. However, Madrid, of course, still carried a threat. They always do, right? They're Real Madrid. One of those threats was when they were quickly able to move the ball to the far side of the pitch. with, again, the long passing of Toni Kroos, but also Camavinga as well, Nacho as well. They could all do it. And then we're looking at a 2-versus-1 situation up against Ian Maatsen, the young fullback, at left back for Borussia Dortmund. Now, the reason this came about was because Valverde would initially move into this wider position as he sees that cue from Toni Kroos. And basically his plan is to start wide, but not actually ever receive the ball. He's just trying to be a decoy. So what he's going to do, he's going to start in this wider position, drawing the attention of Maatsen. And then as Toni Kroos plays the switch, we're going to see a movement where Valverde runs inside. Maatsen feels the need to kind of follow him, or certainly kind of be aware of him. But this creates room for Carvajal to move forward. And then Carvajal, Valverde, they have the potential to again be 2-versus-1 against Maatsen. And we did see some joy for Madrid in this area. The other area where we saw a little bit of joy, although perhaps not as much as you would have expected, was Vinicius Jr. down the left-hand side. Now, again, we know what Madrid like to do. They like to get Rodrigo, Bellingham, Vinicius, their star attackers, all nice and close to each other down this side of the pitch. But they were all actually rather quiet, to be honest. The one that was threatening at times was Vinicius Jr. Now, he didn't have his best game, but he's always going to try things. That is the thing with Vinicius. He is always going to go up against his fullback. He's going to try tricks, he's going to try dribbling, shots at goal, things like that. And for me, whilst it wasn't his best game, I still felt he was the most threatening player in a Madrid shirt. He looked like the one who could make something happen from nothing. From nothing, he could get the ball into these areas and be dangerous and perhaps create. But to be fair, again, Dortmund done a really good job of defending this. They've done a good job of eventually getting back, eventually being compact, and making it really difficult. Really, really difficult to break them down. And Dortmund deserve credit for that. Dortmund also deserve credit, though, not just for the way that they attacked this, the way that they defended, but also the way that they then transitioned into the attack as well. Dortmund, on the counter-attack, were a massive, massive threat in this game, particularly with the idea of initially, let's say we win the ball here or with Emre Can in here, initially winning the ball this side and playing down the right-hand side of the pitch, but the aim always actually is to attack the space on the far side. Now, one of the reasons they looked to do that was because we can see Carvajal is quite high, so there is a lot of room down this side of the pitch. But actually, the room was even there when Carvajal was deeper. So let's say Toni Kroos comes across a little bit and the whole defence kind of shifts over. Even when Carvajal was in a more defensive position, the space was still there. Now, the reason for this is because we know that Carvajal is a front foot defender. He likes to try and kind of steal a yard forward where he can. He likes to be aggressive on the front foot. This does open up space behind him, though. And to be honest, more teams probably should have exploited this in the Champions League this season. Dortmund, finally, were the team to do it. Again, it could be Sancho playing these passes, Sabitzer playing these passes, Brandt, Can, it didn't matter. The space was there, particularly in the first half, to get this ball in behind Carvajal, and Adeyemi physically was too good for him. Too quick, too strong, too powerful, really. And again, with good movement off the ball, he was able to get into the final third. He was able to cause a lot of problems, and he probably should have scored. He should have done more with the chances that he had, but the threat was always there. Dortmund also carried a threat, though, in more sustained possession as well. So when it comes to Borussia Dortmund being in a controlled possession phase, we actually saw a really nice tactical setup, a really nice structure. And again, it involved a midfielder dropping into a deeper position. And it, of course, was Emre Can dropping between the two centre-backs, allowing them to split a little bit wider. Now, of course, this means that Dortmund have a lack of central presence. Their midfielder is deep. There's now a lack of players in the midfield, but that was quickly addressed. Sabitzer would drop deeper, and Maatsen, from left-back, would invert into midfield. Now, Maatsen didn't actually have a great game in this game, to be honest. He had a few poor touches, a few poor passes, but what I will say is I think it does show a quality of a player, or certainly a belief from a manager, to take such a young fullback and invert them in a Champions League final. Again, I don't think he necessarily performed to the top level, but it shows the belief that his manager has in him, so that was an interesting point in this game. What it allowed Dortmund to do, though, was overload key areas of the pitch. Ryerson is going to go forward from right back, Sancho's going to move inside and kind of drift into the half space. And from here, Dortmund were genuinely dangerous. They were very, very good at moving the ball forward through the thirds. It could be Schlotterbeck from wide centre-back, kind of lifting balls over the defence, again for Adeyemi to run onto, in behind that space. It could have been Hummels down the right-hand side, looking for the feet of Ryerson, who then, I felt, combined really well with Sancho. You see, what Dortmund are able to do here is regularly 2 versus 1 the fullbacks. So let's say Schlotterbeck has the ball on this side. As he's going to look to switch, we can see the danger on this side of the pitch, almost on the far side. Because again, as Sancho moves inside, it draws the attention of Mendy, and then Ryerson is going to have a little bit of space that he can move into. let's say it does go to Ryerson and Mendy's going to come out towards him, you can then pop the ball inside to Jadon Sancho. Tactically, this was really, really good from Dortmund. Of course, once they got into these positions in the final third, they're actually 5 versus 4, which means that you have these channels of space that you can attack, these kind of corridors of space that you can attack. And Dortmund did do this, particularly for the first hour of the game. They carried a massive, massive threat in these areas. And tactically, I think they were set up very, very well. The problem for them, unfortunately, was they probably just lacked that bit of quality in the final third that they needed. Sancho didn't really produce anything. Adeyemi struggled with his final ball. Füllkrug was given half chances from where he actually done pretty well, to be fair, shooting early to try and test Courtois. But they just lacked the bit of quality that they needed. Tactically, they were good. They were set up well, to be honest. And it's a little bit harsh on them to lose 2-0. But a problem that Dortmund had, ultimately, was between the boxes they may have been pretty good. But at the end of the day, in the biggest moments, Madrid were better. And that's, of course, in the box. Whether it be Carvajal from a corner, which might have been slightly unexpected, but still Carvajal from a corner. And then in a big moment, Jude Bellingham's assist to Vinicius. And Vinicius just doesn't miss from there. Again, it's the big moment. The big, big moment. Dortmund had similar chances to that in the first half, didn't take them. Vinicius Jr. took his chance. Madrid took their chances. And at that point, the quality just oozes through them. You know, game state comes into play. Dortmund start throwing more players forward to try and get something from the game. It opens up space for Real Madrid to transition into. And in the end, Dortmund go out with it with a little bit of a whimper in the final stages. But let's not get this wrong. They were very good for large parts of this game. Really good. Madrid were not at their best by any means. Tactically, I think Dortmund got the upper hand here and were the better side. But Madrid kind of had the better players in the big moments, and that is why you pay the big money for these players, because they do win you cup finals, and especially Champions League finals, as we have seen so many times now. Did Madrid actually deserve to win? I'm not entirely sure. Perhaps you can let me know in the comments down below, and also your man of the match as well. I'm really intrigued to hear. But yeah, let me know what you think of the game in general. Who was the better side? Who were the better players? Tactically, who got it right? Who got it wrong? Should we have seen a different substitute to try and impact the game? Let me know what you think in the comments, but apart from that, we are finished for today. The club season is over. Thank you very much for your support all season, but we are finished. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.